Today is day 5 of the Karen Reed trial. This is part 2. I'm going to go into the voir dire with the ARCCA experts, who are also known as the crash daddies. They are here today testifying without the jury present in order to kind of convince the judge that they should be able to explain their whole side of the story. She's already said that they're going to be able to testify, but she's doing this voir dire in order to limit the scope of what they're able to testify about. First up is Dr. Daniel Wolf. He testified in the first trial. They did have voir dires about that testimony too. And he's going to go up first. After him will be Dr. Rentschler. And Hank Brennan is questioning him first. This questioning went on for a really long time, and I'm really surprised the judge didn't stop him or cut him off at any point, because there was a lot of the same questioning. Felt like bullying a little bit. It was like very intense questioning, and it didn't really go anywhere until we got to the cross-examination and the redirect, which left no time for Dr. Rentschler at all. I think he only had like 5 minutes to answer a question. Like I said, the first 45 minutes are wasted on what kind of communication have you had with the defense. And Dr. Wolf is really open, honest, explaining all of the communication that he's had. He says that he's only spoken on the phone, text messaged, and emailed with the defense. And then we learned that he has actually been using the app Signal, which I'll get into too. Dr. Wolf explicitly says that he's never communicated with Karen Reed. On March 20th, 2024, this is last March, before trial 1, he spoke to Alan Jackson and had permissions from the Department of Justice to utilize ARCCA as a witness. Not to hire them, but kind of just as the opportunity to call them in the trial. On April 24th, 2024, he remembers the convo he had with the defense, but he doesn't remember specifics. Brennan wants those specifics, though. He's going in really hard. On April 30th, he had a phone call. He thinks it was about 40 minutes long. And Brennan wants to know, did you bill for this phone call? Were you expecting to get paid and compensated? And he's like, I'm a salaried employee, but he does submit his time to his boss, and it is billed from ARCCA. And he does know that the defense eventually paid the bill. It gets a little iffy here. He's asked if he has deleted his texts, and he says yes, he doesn't keep his texts from a year ago. And then this is kind of when we get into the questioning about the Signal app. Mr. Jackson said that was going to be his preferred method of contact earlier this year after the first trial, though. So more questions about specific conversations. The first time you've met the defense team, it went on for a really long time. At the end of the questioning, it's brought up that he sent a summary to the defense of questions on June 17th. These are questions that he would recommend that Alan Jackson ask, but it was the night before, I believe at 6 p.m. before the voir dire, and he's not sure if Jackson utilized it. He assumed that Jackson already had everything prepared. He was just saying that he had a feeling that the prosecution was going to argue this, that he didn't inspect the vehicle, so he was making suggestions in order to help the jury understand. Alessi is doing the cross-examination. He kind of gets right to the point. He wants to know how they got working with the Department of Justice. Was there a contract? Yes. From June 2024 to December 2024, did that contract or that contract number change? The answer is no. Essentially saying that they were hired by the defense and there was no need for anyone else to hire them. They were strictly working with the defense until December 2024. The report was finalized February 12th, and nothing has changed in the report. He talked to Alan Jackson after the fact, but nothing has changed after he spoke to the defense about the substance of the report before that voir dire. That report was him and Dr. Rentschler's complete findings. He wants to know if the defense texted you in regards to potential further work after the first trial. And he says, that's when we exchanged a few messages on Signal. Mr. Jackson said he would prefer to chat that way. And Alessi asked, was there any understanding in your mind that they needed to move to Signal because the prosecution was subpoenaing the phones of the attorneys and Karen Reed's family? And he said he didn't know that. He said he was not aware of any issue using Signal. He's he was totally fine with that. It's not against ARCCA's policies. So he said he was fine communicating that way. This is where it gets really dicey for the defense. In mid-March of 2025, this year, before the retrial, he reached out to the Department of Justice to see if he could be hired by the defense in the retrial. They said yes. He was officially retained by the defense March 26, 2025, just a couple months earlier. Immediately, the defense sent over 800 gigabytes of data that the ARCCA experts needed to go through, and they essentially were being hired now as accident reconstructionists to combat whatever the prosecution's theory is. So they're essentially going to play a huge role in the rebuttal for Karen Read's defense. The judge had ordered for all of the ARCCA testing to be done by a deadline, and he said all that testing has been done, the data's done, everything's been turned over. They're just waiting for all their final reports. And he told the court that they will have that by May 7th. Bev at multiple points was trying to say, hey, we need to get that report before May 7th. And 800 gigabytes is like a ton of info. So all their reporting, testing, recording, everything that they did, they're working on it still. Brennan does the redirect, and he says, did you ever share any info from the Department of Justice regarding witness testimony? And he said yes, regarding the testimony by he heard from the Department of Justice about the testimony of the prosecution's expert, and he says, did you know that there was a sequestration order in effect and you weren't supposed to be watching other testimony or hearing about it? And he says, no, he didn't know. That's a big deal. I wonder if the judge is going to care about that. Also, Brennan gets really upset because in trial 1, they never turned over any of their raw data and any of their raw testing. It's all confidential because they were hired by the Department of Justice. So he was upset and expressing a ton of frustration that they couldn't get that raw data. The biggest point, I think, is when Brennan is arguing that the defense team could have hired the ARCCA experts a lot sooner. This trial was actually supposed to start in January. They didn't hire them until the end of March. What would they have done if, the trial didn't get pushed until April? So their contract with the Department of Justice had expired in June of 2024. So they had June, July, August, September, all these months to be hired, and the defense didn't do it. And he doesn't think that they should get any more time just because they held off and didn't hire them. At this point, Bev is really upset. She calls for a sidebar and interrupts everything. And then Dr. Wolf is done for the day. We don't even get to say goodbye to him. He just is done. They call in Dr. Rentschler. He also works for ARCCA. He works together with Dr. Wolf on a lot of the accident reconstruction. His questioning is very brief. It's maybe 5 minutes max. He says he had limited conversation with the defense, way less than Dr. Wolf, just about logistics, maybe one phone call and 5 texts. After he testified in the trial, he was invited to a lunch because nobody was available to take him to the airport yet. So he goes to lunch, he says, with Karen Read's defense, Karen Read's family. They tried to talk to him. He sat in the corner. So that was a little interesting. Like, were you guys chummy, buddy, even though you weren't hired by the defense? You went to lunch together. Like, what does that mean? So it sounds like Dr. Wolf and Dr. Rentschler are going to be able to testify. I think the scope is going to be very limited, but I think it's going to be as a rebuttal to what the Commonwealth's new accident reconstructionist is saying. I forget what his name is, but I brought him up a few times. So we're just going to have to see what she says. Hopefully we get some answers soon, but the voir dire is done and we will go back to normal testimony tomorrow. Ian Whiffen will be back on the stand. And then there are rumors swirling that Jen McCabe is going to be in tomorrow as well. So that's it.